So here we are at the Justice Conference in Bend, the River House, where this is the whole downstairs kind of basement part is filled with exhibits and tables for different organizations. And Stop Child Trafficking Now is being represented right over here. We're set up with a little slideshow of the walk. Got our brochures, a sign-up sheet, our t-shirt. There's Mary. Hi! Right next to Not For Sale. There must be 100 different organizations here, all fighting for justice in one way or another. So excited to be here. Justice Conference 2011.
Are giving less than ever to the church than we ever have. And then, so all the kind of militant atheists jumped on that, and they're like, see, God's dead, the church is over, but then there was another study that came out that said, but young people are some of the most generous people on the planet. Our generation is out giving the boomers and those that have gone before us. We just don't trust the church with our money, because the church hasn't been good stewards. But I think that we can be creative. We can call the church back to who she is meant to be, and we can have creativity. As Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. We can do that, but we can also be the change that we want to see in the church and bring it back to the imagination of Scripture. And, there's one kid, every once in a while you meet people have this economic imagination, and they're beautiful, and like, I always wish I had a video camera, so now I just travel with a filmmaker. But my buddy Jamie, we met this kid named Mark, and I'm going to show you his story because I think it's beautiful. He found himself immersed and sort of suffocating in Christendom, and yet he felt something spark in him, and his story can inspire all of us. Check it out.
When I was in California, I started reading The Irresistible Revolution by Shane Claiborne. So my brother Rick, he sent me a copy of the book. And as I was reading it, I was totally inspired. And I was feeling convicted inside, living in one of the richest communities in America, in Orange County, California. And I was part of these mega churches. I wasn't living as selfless as I could be. And would you really give all your possessions away, sell them to the poor, and follow me? And I was challenged and convicted, would I really do something like that? But I kind of shrugged it off. I was like, well, I really don't even have any possessions. But the next day, some of my friends came to visit me from Indiana and California, and they wanted to go get on the show The Price is Right. Here it comes! From the Bob Barker Studio at CBS in Hollywood. And Mark Weaver, come on! Actual retail price is $14.49, Mark. 60, Bob. 60. We're going to try 60. We're looking for the back of the car in there. Shake the hand of a winner. You have to beat 85 cents to get into the showcase, and you did it. That's great. Got a brand new convertible. $6,192 mark into the winner. But then I remembered the words that Shane wrote in his book. So I took cars that I won on the show right back to the dealership, and I used the money to fly to Uganda, Africa, and I just decided to live in orphanages for a while and just give all the money away to them.
You know, one of the things that
Never felt better than to just...
One of the things that you hear as Mark tells his story is that what he did just makes sense, you know, in light of what of the inequities that we live in. He didn't do anything extraordinary. And I think what happened to him is he felt himself come to life too, you know, and that's the real secret as we get this heart for justice. And it may begin with charity, but then it ends up with justice, you know. And as he started giving, he felt himself coming to life. And that's the true secret, I think, is that we're made to live for justice. We're made to live for compassion. And so when we do it, we come to life too. The fact is, if you look at the wealthiest corners of the world, the more we're consuming, the more lonely we moved in together into an abandoned cathedral. And they started living there. And as they were living there, we read in the newspaper that they had been given a 48-hour eviction notice. And if they weren't out, then they could be arrested for trespassing on church property. And that story sparked something in us. You know, there's kind of those moments where you throw your hands up at God and you say, God, why don't you do something? And then you hear God say back, I did do something. I made you. Get out! You know, and so that's what we heard. And we got involved in that struggle. And on the front of the cathedral, the families, I mean, they had such imagination. They hung on the front of the cathedral a banner that said, how can we worship a homeless man on Sunday and ignore one on Monday? And it was their courage that inspired us. I mean, when the archdiocese officials came with all the press to evict them, the family said, oh, wait just a second. We've been praying, and we've talked to the owner of this building. That's good, right? And they said, and God says we can stay until we have housing. And that standoff lasted for weeks and weeks and months and months. In fact, all kinds of people started organizing in the neighborhood. I mean, we heard at the last minute that the city was going to bring in the fire marshal and say that they don't meet fire standards. And so it was in the interest of the family's safety that they needed to get out. And the night before that was to happen, there was a knock at the door. And it was about midnight. We opened the door, and there's all these firefighters outside. And we're like, oh, man, not now. There's no media. All the kids are asleep, you know. So we start talking, trying to talk them out of kicking the families out. And they said, no, listen. We're not here to kick you out. We know what's happening, and we know that it's not right. And we're here against orders. We could get in really big trouble, so keep it on the down low. You know, and they said, but we want to help you get ready for tomorrow. And they took us to the fire department and helped us get smoke detectors and exit signs and fire extinguishers. And we worked all night, you know. And then the next day, the fire marshal came with all the reporters and the police and the archdiocese officials and walked through. And he's like, all right. Not bad. I'm not kicking them out. They're close enough to meeting fire standards. And we're like, yes, Lord! You know, and it's that struggle, which, you know, that was one, but they continue to this day, you know. But I'm so excited by the courage of brothers and sisters in poverty, and of even the church, and of brothers and sisters of conscience in the movement that are able to stare in the face of injustice without flinching and do something creative. Chris and I heard about a congregation around the corner from where we live, and this was a congregation that had started taking in homeless families, and they were doing beautiful, compassionate work and justice work. But then the city started cracking down on them. They came in and they said, we don't know what you're doing, but you can't run a shelter here. And they're like, well, we're a church, and we're taking care of people. That's what the church has always done. And the city said, no, you're running a shelter, and you don't have proper licenses and all that stuff, and we're not going to let you run a shelter here. We're going to shut you down. And they parted ways, but these folks were Pentecostals. And I don't know if you know Pentecostals, but you don't mess with a Pentecostal. You know what I mean? They started praying together, and then they felt the Spirit sort of move in them, and they came back to the city, and they said, we heard what you said. that we can't run a shelter. So we've decided, in respect, we won't run a shelter, but we're going to have a revival. And it's going to start every night and go until the morning. And it's going to go all night here. And if you want to shut down the revival, we dare you try. You know,